Every 4 years, the World Cup gives us the same feeling.
Spain have won the World Cup.
Maybe this is finally the tournament where history changes. A smaller nation catches some hype, an underdog knocks out a giant, and fans around the world start dreaming that football's biggest prize might finally have a brand new champion. It's one of the things that makes the World Cup so special. Anything can happen, or at least that's what it feels like, because when the tournament is over and the confetti starts falling, the ending is usually very familiar. It's another football giant lifting the trophy. Across 23 World Cups, from the very first tournament in 1930 all the way to 2026, 84 different countries have qualified for football's biggest stage. Yet despite all those nations chasing the same dream, only 8 have ever managed to win it. Even more surprisingly, every single World Cup champion has come from just 2 continents, Europe and South America. Not one country from Africa, Asia, North America, or Oceania has ever lifted the trophy. In fact, across almost a century of World Cup history, none of those continents has even produced a losing finalist. So why does the World Cup always seem to end the same way? Why has football's greatest prize remained locked within 2 regions of the world for almost 100 years? Winning the World Cup really puts you in an exclusive club. It's like being put at the VIP booth at a nightclub. I'm sure Neymar knows all about that. Brazil sits alone at the top of this club with 5 World Cup titles. Germany and Italy are right behind them with 4 each. Argentina has won 3, while France, Uruguay, and Spain have lifted the trophy twice. Then England complete the list with their win in 1966. No wonder these poor guys are always thinking about it coming home. It's been 60 years. Those are the only 8 nations that have ever called themselves world champions. Even making the finals is rare, with only 13 countries having ever reached the last stage. That goes to the Messi haters. Never thought I would see a player get criticized for leading his country to 3 World Cup finals. The 5 nations who have made it to a final but never managed to win it all came from Europe. It's the Netherlands, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Sweden, and Croatia. No country from Africa, Asia, North America, or Oceania has ever reached the biggest match in world football. Germany has played in 8 World Cup finals, Brazil and Argentina have each reached 7, Italy has made 6 appearances, France has reached 4, and the Netherlands has played in 3. Those 6 countries alone account for 35 of the 46 places available in every World Cup final ever played. That's an incredible level of dominance. Now, underdog stories absolutely exist. Morocco reaching the semifinals in 2022 was unforgettable. South Korea's incredible run in 2002 captured the imagination of the football world, though some sketchy decisions did help with this. Turkey also shocked everyone by reaching the last 4 in that same World Cup. But almost every fairy tale follows the same script. The smaller nations make headlines during the group stage or the early knockout rounds. Then as the pressure increases and the margins become smaller, the traditional football superpowers almost always take over. By the time the final weekend arrives, it's usually the same familiar faces fighting for the biggest prize in football. Now, one of the biggest reasons for this is coaching. Long before a future World Cup winner ever steps onto a professional pitch, they're being taught by qualified coaches who know exactly how to develop younger players. And that's where some countries have a huge advantage. Take Spain, for example. Becoming a top-level coach there is surprisingly affordable. Earning a UEFA A license costs around 1,200 euros, while the qualification, the UEFA Pro license, costs just over 1,1200 euros as well. Because of that, thousands of people are able to become qualified coaches. Today, Spain has more than 15,000 coaches holding either a UEFA A or UEFA Pro license, including over 2,100 with the highest qualification. That works out to roughly 1 UEFA Pro coach for every 22,000 people. Now compare that to the fish and chips lovers in England. Getting the exact same qualifications is way more expensive. A UEFA A license costs around £3,645, while a UEFA Pro license is close to 10,000 pounds. As a result, England has historically had fewer elite coaches, despite having a larger population. At one point, there were only around 1,800 coaches with either a UEFA A or UEFA Pro license, leaving the country with roughly one UEFA Pro coach for every 263,000 people. That's a massive difference. When a country has thousands of highly qualified coaches, young kids are taught all the fundamentals of football at a high level early. In countries with fewer qualified coaches, youth football becomes much more focused on athleticism. The biggest, fastest, and strongest kids dominate early on. Now, that might win you games at the youth level, but it doesn't always produce players who can control a World Cup match against the very best teams in the world. That's why countries like Spain seem to produce technically brilliant midfielders and intelligent defenders generation after generation. They have a system that teaches players those habits from the very beginning. Look at Spain's 2026 World Cup winning team. You had Rodri, who controlled the game with incredible composure. He won ground duels while dictating the tempo through his passing. Behind him, the young Pau Cubarsí anchored the best backline in the tournament as Spain only conceded one goal. These players didn't just develop that football intelligence overnight. They were shaped by a coaching system that has been teaching the same ideas for years. And that's something many emerging football nations are still trying to build. Now, coaching is only a part of the story. Culture matters just as much. In countries like Argentina, Brazil, Spain, and Italy, football is a part of everyday life. Though nowadays, the Italians in particular will tell you that it's not, and the lack of enthusiasm from the youth towards the sport is a reason for their downfall, but I'll save that for a different video. In the countries that I listed earlier, kids grow up with a ball at their feet almost from the moment they can walk. They play in the streets, parks, and neighborhood squares for hours every day, constantly improving without even realizing it. Those endless informal games teach creativity and how to solve problems under pressure long before these players ever join a professional academy. Now, not every country has that environment. Take the United States as an example. The country's best young athletes are spread across several major sports like basketball, American football, baseball, and then soccer.
Why do they have such a problem calling it football? It's a game played with a ball that is struck with the foot. Hence, football. You see? Are you following this, America?
On top of that, youth football has traditionally relied on expensive pay-to-play club systems, meaning many talented kids never get the same opportunities. I mean, think about it. All of the greatest players of all time came from poverty. In the United States, they wouldn't be able to afford to play. In the US, coaches are also obsessed with pace and power rather than the technical creative side that develops naturally through street football. Then there's something even harder to measure: history. There's an idea known as the Lindy effect, which suggests that the longer something has been successful, the more likely it is to stay successful in the future. Football works in a very similar way. Countries like Brazil, Germany, Argentina, and Italy have spent generations building winning culture. Every generation grows up expecting to compete for the World Cup because that's simply what their country has always done. That expectation creates enormous pressure. For those nations, reaching the semifinals, the quarterfinals, it becomes the minimum standard. If they crash out earlier, the criticism is immediate. Coaches lose their jobs, federation leaders come under pressure, and the entire youth development systems are reviewed. That constant fear of failure forces these countries to keep investing in better academies, better coaching, better sports science. The cycle never really stops. For countries without that history, the expectations are completely different. Simply qualifying for the World Cup can feel like a national celebration. Reaching the round of 16 is often remembered as one of the greatest moments in the country's sporting history. Now, let me make this crystal clear. Those achievements deserve to be celebrated. Cape Verde should celebrate making it out of the groups. Paraguay has every right to be happy after eliminating Germany. But naturally, there's going to be less pressure on these countries to completely overhaul their system. Then there's the level of competition. Europe and South America constantly push each other. Whether it's the Euros, Copa America, or just World Cup qualifying matches, the biggest football nations are regularly forced to play against elite opponents where every mistake is actually punished. That means when the World Cup arrives, they're already used to playing under enormous pressure. Many teams from regions like CONCACAF or Asia don't get that same level of competition during qualifying. As a result, when they finally face the world's best in the latter stages of a World Cup, the speed of the game, the tactical intensity, and the tiny margins can be unlike anything they've ever experienced before. Now, the other thing is that football has become more global every single year. Players are moving across borders earlier than ever, and more footballers now represent countries different from the ones they were born in. The numbers show just how quickly things have changed. At the 2018 World Cup, just over 11% of players represented a country other than their birthplace. That number jumped to 16.5% in 2022, and by the 2026 World Cup, it had reached almost 24%. I mean, that's nearly 1 in every 4 players. For many smaller football nations, this has been a huge advantage. Countries with smaller populations have been able to strengthen their squad by recruiting dual national players who grew up in some of the best football systems in the world. Curaçao is one of the best examples. At times, almost their entire squad consisted of players born and developed in the Netherlands. Same thing can be said about the Moroccan team, who recruited a bunch of players who weren't born in Morocco, like Hakimi, Brahim Diaz, and Bono. They actually made history at the 2026 World Cup by fielding 11 foreign-born players. It's helped raise the level of many national teams, but it's also revealed something important. The countries producing these players are still the real football superpowers. France, Spain, Germany, and the Netherlands are still football's biggest talent factories. They develop huge numbers of elite players every year, and while some eventually choose to represent other nations, the very best usually stay with the country that developed them. So yes, diaspora recruitment is great at helping a nation become competitive, but winning the whole tournament is a completely different challenge. To become world champions, you need top players in almost every position, not just a handful. That's where the biggest football nations still separate themselves. Quick one before we continue. If you love watching football with other fans, join our Pet Talk Sports Discord community. We stream games, do live watch-alongs, and talk football together throughout the match. Premium members of this channel automatically get access to watch the games with me. The link is in the description. Now back to the video. Now the money tells a similar story. For the expanded 2026 World Cup, FIFA handed out a record-breaking $1.5 billion to participating federations. Every country was guaranteed a substantial payment just for qualifying, while the eventual champions earned a bigger reward. Wait till Spain hears about the IRS and the cut they're gonna take. For smaller federations, that money is incredibly valuable. But money alone can't buy football history. You can build a brand new training center, you can upgrade stadiums and invest in sports science. What you can't do overnight is create generations of experienced coaches, build a culture where kids spend every day playing football in the streets, or develop the confidence that comes from decades of competing in World Cup finals. Those things take years. More often, they take generations actually. And that's why despite football becoming more global than ever before, the World Cup trophy still has a habit of ending up in the same hands. So looking at all this data, is there actually a country that could become the next first-time World Cup winner? Well, the answer is yes, but it's still incredibly difficult. When analysts build statistical models to predict future champions, they usually find the same pattern over and over again. Almost every World Cup winner enters the tournament as one of the highest-rated teams in the world. They have years of experience playing deep into major tournaments, arrive in excellent form, and are packed with players who start every week for Europe's biggest clubs. When you compare today's national teams against those benchmarks, only a handful of countries stand out as the most likely to finally join football's most exclusive club. The Netherlands is probably the strongest candidate. It's actually surprising they haven't already won one. The Dutch have reached 3 World Cup finals, produced some of the greatest players the sport has ever seen, and possess one of the best development systems in world football through academies like Ajax, PSV, and Feyenoord. They have the coaching, the talent, and the infrastructure. The problem is they've simply fallen on the wrong side of football's smallest margins, whether that's losing finals or suffering heartbreaking knockout defeats. Portugal deserve to be part of this conversation too. Alongside the Dutch, they are one of the biggest football nations to never win a World Cup. Despite producing some of the greatest players the game has ever seen, Portugal has never even reached a World Cup final. Their best finish came in 1966, when Eusebio took them to 3rd place. Yes, this beast right here scored 9 goals, but Ronaldo fans like to act like Portuguese football didn't exist until he came around. Then of course in 2006, a young CR7 and Figo helped Portugal reach the semifinals. Those 2 tournaments are their best finishes. Now Portugal has everything you'd expect from future world champions. The country is home to 3 of football's greatest talent factories, Benfica, Sporting, and Porto. Between them, they've developed an endless list of world-class players who have gone on to star for Europe's biggest clubs. Generation after generation, Portugal continues to produce technically gifted footballers, some elite coaches, and teams capable of competing with anyone. The only thing missing is just that one magical tournament. Croatia is another fascinating case. With a population of under 4 million people, they've consistently achieved things that seemed almost impossible. They reached the 2018 World Cup final and finished 3rd in both 1998 and 2022, all while producing technically brilliant players through academies like Dinamo Zagreb. Their biggest challenge is depth. A small population makes it much harder to replace golden generations once they begin to retire. Then there's Morocco. After becoming the first African nation to reach a World Cup semi-final in 2022, they've shown they can compete with anyone. Their federation has done an outstanding job combining homegrown talent with players developed in Europe's biggest academies. The next step for them is building enough depth to compete at that level every single tournament. Japan also deserves to be in the conversation. They have one of the most organized football systems in Asia. They continue to send more players to Europe's top leagues every year and have become a regular presence in the knockout stages. They're disciplined, technically excellent, and extremely well coached. The biggest question is whether they can consistently match Europe's and South America's elite in the physical battles and clutch moments that often decide World Cup knockout matches. Because the Japanese, these poor guys, somehow always find the most heartbreaking way to lose. Finally, there's the United States, America. On paper, their potential is enormous. They've got a massive population, world-class facilities, and almost unlimited financial resources to make the US one of the most talked about long-term candidates. But there are several obstacles in the way. As I mentioned earlier, their youth development is still heavily influenced by expensive pay-to-play systems. Their coaching depth hasn't reached the level seen in Europe's biggest football nations. And many of the country's best athletes continue to choose sports like basketball, hand-egg, or baseball instead. Playing most of their competitive matches in CONCACAF also means they don't regularly face the same level of opposition that Europe's and South America's biggest teams experience. When you put all these pieces together, it becomes much easier to understand why the same countries keep winning the World Cup. Because yes, as football becomes more global, the gap is getting smaller. Tournament expansion, better academies around the world, and the rise of dual national players have all helped emerging nations become more competitive than ever before. But lifting the trophy is still a completely different challenge. It won't happen because of one favorable draw or one golden generation of players. It will happen when a country builds the same foundations that today's football giants have spent decades, and in many cases over a century, putting in place. Until then, the World Cup will probably keep ending the same way it always has, with one of football's old giants standing at the top of the world once again. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you will love this one too. Check it out right here.